The alley seemed to go on forever, moving through people's gardens and hopping every fence and wall. I wasn't risking any deviation from the path. Moved straight towards the floodlights. This was taking a while, and before we knew it, night had fallen. Even though we had flashlights, the sounds emitting from the darkness were nightmare fuel. Screaming, car alarms, babies crying, dogs barking, gunshots, and those awful sounds the zombies made when they were nearby made it hard to keep moving. It felt like at any second, something would emerge from the darkness and grab you. I occasionally checked on Samantha behind me, who had worked her way through nearly 2 whole vapes to try and calm her nerves. Every time I checked on her, I just tried to reassure her and told her that we were nearly there. I was scared. I didn't want to admit it, but I was absolutely terrified. I felt like every step in the dark would be my last. I just focused on the distant floodlights that kept moving. As long as we could make it there, this nightmare would be over. As we hopped the last fence, we realized we were in an open street. The power must have gone out because the street lights weren't on. It was pitch black. We raised our flashlights into the street. The light revealed a plethora of dark, shadowy figures, all huddled in the street and shambling around. We quickly turned off our lights. The street was full of zombies. We needed to cross the street and through the gate on the other side that led to more alleys. It was about 30 feet or so, but it felt like an entire shark-infested ocean. I wasn't sure where exactly we needed to go, so I raised my light and switched it on. I caught a glimpse of the gate and switched my light back off. Samantha tapped me on the shoulder. "Fucking stop," she whispered. "They'll see you." I paused for a moment. Wait a minute. They should have seen me. It was a bright light in a dark street. My curiosity got the better of me. I raised my light once more and switched it on. I shined my light right at the horde of undead. Nothing. They didn't react. They just stood there. That was it. Their eyes. The completely white eyes. They were blind. Or at least, they had really bad low-light vision. We kept our lights on and slowly made our way towards the gate. With a sigh of relief, we reached the gate. I put my hand on the gate's latch and realized the whole gate was covered in rust. I pushed the gate slightly, and it began to squeak. I stopped. The horde behind us began making sounds. The only way I describe these sounds is like a caveman who heard a saber-toothed tiger nearby. Sort of alerted grunts. I realized this was going to be bad. I turned to Samantha. "When this gate opens, you run like fuck and don't stop, okay?" She was trembling. She looked at me, then zombies, then back to me. "All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I pushed the gate open and it emitted the loudest, ear-splitting squeal. On our way through, I heard that awful roar from the horde behind us. We just kept running, leaping every fence and wall in our path, being chased by the sounds of the undead following close behind, knocking over everything as they went. I was getting tired. I noticed Samantha was in front of me at this point. I was beginning to think I wouldn't make it out of this alley. My fear was realized. A wall, too tall to scale alone. Without thinking, I crouched down and grabbed Samantha's foot as she tried to climb. With all the strength I could muster, I pushed her up until she could reach the top of the wall. She grabbed the edge and pulled herself over. I didn't realize the situation I had left myself in. Samantha was on the other side screaming my name, and I couldn't answer. I needed to think. I needed space. I turned toward the advancing horde of death and raised my pistol. Every pull of the trigger brought with it a flash of light and a crash of thunder. Each shot deafening me and illuminating the approaching horror in front of me. The faces, the eyes, the snarling blood-stained mouths. The flashes were so fast, it was like a slideshow showing me my own death rushing towards me. I lost count of the shots because suddenly the gun only clicked and I stood in darkness once more. I knew I wasn't free of this hell because I could still hear footsteps getting louder from the alley ahead. Seeing no other option, I threw the empty gun towards the darkness and turned towards the wall. I set my sights on a nearby wheelie bin next to the wall and set off towards it in a full sprint. I jumped up onto a small brick wall belonging to one of the back gardens that lined the alley. From the small garden wall, I hopped onto the top of the bin and jumped as high as I could. I reached out for the edge of the wall, and with a last desperate attempt at survival, I grabbed the edge and pulled myself up. As I reached the top of the wall, I saw Samantha on the other side, who started screaming my name like she hasn't seen me in years. At this point, all the energy I had was gone, and I slowly fell over the wall. Any attempt I could have made at saving myself was gone. I hit the ground in front of Samantha, and all the air leaves my lungs as I crash into the pavement below. Samantha begins helping me up because the chase isn't over. I look up to see several hands grabbing the top of the wall. I don't want to see the abominations following after, so I do my best to pick myself up and continue running. We make our way to a wide, empty street. The glow of the stadium is blinding. It's right there, so close. But even closer are the sounds of ravenous running corpses behind us. The lights, the stadium, they're right there. Hell approaches from behind, while heaven sits just out of reach. I can make it. We can make it. As I prepare to feel hands grabbing me and teeth tearing into me, a large set of floodlights ahead of us light up the entire street, and a voice erupts from the heavenly glow. Hit the deck. Now, Samantha, still trying to hold me up from my fall, throws me to the ground and dives nearly on top of me. The thunderous sound of a .50 caliber machine gun violently interrupts the sounds of footsteps and growls of the approaching horde behind us. As the bullets whistle past overhead, the hordes are stopped in their tracks and are torn apart like piñatas full of meat. Flesh and viscera litter the street, and the hellish growls and moans are no more. Get up slowly and keep your hands where we can see them. The voice was stern and commanding, but it was the most comforting thing I'd heard all day. Samantha and I managed to get to our feet. Following the instructions given to us, we walked forward slowly with our hands raised until we reached the gate. At this point, I'm ready to pass out. The voice was stern and commanding, but it was the most comforting thing I'd heard all day. Samantha and I managed to get to our feet. Following the instructions given to us, we walked forward slowly with our hands raised until we reached the gate. At this point, I'm ready to pass out. Coming down from that much adrenaline doesn't feel the best. Everything is a blur. We get brought into a bunch of different rooms, and people in hazmat suits administer a lot of tests, draw blood, look at our eyes, check our tongues, and eventually let us into the next area. The main football pitch of the stadium was now full of tents and temporary buildings. Soldiers and military vehicles surrounded the place. We waited in line with a bowl to get some soup with a few hundred other people. Other people who probably survived a very similar nightmare. Honestly, probably a worse one. I get to the front of the queue and a man in fatigues and a beret serves me up some vegetable soup. It's like being back in school. I look for a place to sit and notice Samantha already sitting at a table. It was one of those metal picnic tables, like the ones you see in prison movies. As I sit down with my bowl in front of Samantha, I sort of come back to my senses. Samantha and I look at each other. I think we were exhausted because all we could do was laugh. It was somber. The laughter ended, and we sat with teary eyes, just being grateful that we were alive. We had survived a nightmare which we would probably relive every time we slept. I'll be seeing those faces in the darkness for a very long time. I take a moment to gather myself, taking in the camp made up around us. Although something catches my eye. In a nearby tent, sitting on a cot and wrapped in a blanket was Kathy. In her arms was a small child, about 6 or 7 years old. They were both in rough shape, and the girl was bawling her eyes out. We lock eyes for a second. They seemed glazed over, red and puffy from weeping. I want to give her shit for leaving us to fend for ourselves, but honestly, she looks like she had a worse time. Besides, I can't see her other girl anywhere. Instead, I set my eyes back to my bowl of soup. I lift my spoon and take a mouthful. Compared to the toast I had for breakfast, the chocolate bar, and many crisps from the shop, this was the best thing I ate all day.